prelude by Scriabin. You'll hear that he loved Chopin.
Welcome. Welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, you are welcome here. No matter whether you fret about the future or the past, you are welcome here. All are welcome here. It is good, it is wonderful to be together this morning. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral lands First Universalist now stands. If you are here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. We have a visitor's form that can be found in the chat. Please click on it and fill out the form so that we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. As we gather this morning, we invite you to pop into the chat and offer a greeting. You can find this at the top or the bottom of your screen with an icon of a text bubble and the word chat. So please pop on over and offer a greeting. It could be a wave of a hello, it could be an I'm here, or whatever it is you prefer. Welcome to worship at First Universalist.
We meet today, strangers and old friends, as seekers on the path. We bring with us our hunger for meaning, our loving hearts, and our longing for justice. We bring our losses and our deepest fears, our joys and dreams. Grateful for this time we have found to be together, to rest in the peace of one another's company in this holy hour. Together, may we find courage to open our hearts to the new, courage to travel onward, even when we cannot see exactly where the path may lead, knowing always that we do not travel alone. In the name of the love that makes us one, come, my friends, let us worship together. As Peter House lights the chalice at the First Universalist Church, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me now in our affirmation of faith, followed by the doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all.
From all that dwell below the sky.
when so many are touched by tragedy, when even those of us who are doing okay feel like we're being tossed up and down on rough waters, when we make plans only to see them wiped out like castles in the sand, dissolved by the next big wave. In these days, for many of us, our church has been a lifeline. What this congregation has done in the past year and a half has not been easy. It has not been perfect, but it has been amazing. We are navigating the storm with courage, creativity, and love. This has been possible because of your continued generous support of First Universalist and our mission to serve the community and nurture the spirit. Here on Zoom, we invite you to click the link in the chat to give online to the First Universalist Church. You can always also, of course, send a check in the physical mail. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
This is a piece by Couperin that was written for the clavichord in 1717. It is a round, it goes back and forth. You'll hear the theme repeating, and it will give you time to go get your checkbook. Thanks.
I invite you now into this reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from a more heart-centered place. As I place stones into the bowl, Bridget Watts will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All are also invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat that we may hear from the community gathered here.
A joy from Heather and Bill Jones. Our son Simon and his wife Danielle welcomed their new baby daughter Madison on August 19th. 6 weeks early, but more than 6 pounds and doing fine. Nuke and Ed from Nuke. Concern for my brother and his family who live just east of New Orleans in Hurricane Ida's path. They are evacuating as I type this. Paula, a joy that my nephew Joe has found his new home after moving from his home of over 40 years. Bill Elwell, my brother Phil is suffering from 4th-degree lung cancer with a lifespan expectation of 6 months. I believe this is from Emma, a joy to celebrate the wedding of my non-biological sister yesterday. We grew up together with our parents as best friends. So happy for them. Oh, Ann Rohde, remembering the life of Dick Brush, who passed away on Friday. Dick was very special to our congregation. Jean Otts, concern for all our Afghan allies who have not been able to evacuate. John Lukes and Carol Zimberlin. John is doing better after 2 nights at Highland ER in the past week. Our dear friend Paul Law, longtime member at UU Winton, has been dealing with liver cancer. Emma, joy for our board and COVID task force for doing their best to keep us safe. Marnie Agers, to everyone. To Joy, my son and his family, who have been living in Oxford, UK, will be spending a few days with me. Can't wait to hug them all, including 4-year-old Russell and 5-month-old Helen. I've never hugged her so far. Bill Elwell. Becky is glad to be able to attend service and home from the hospital. Nice to see you, Becky.
And we drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left in the unspoken, silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. Today, as every day, we light a white candle to acknowledge that we are still a community affected by grief, loss, and fear of living through the pandemic. May this candle's flame hold our experiences around this horrific disease, and may its light be a beacon of hope and a reminder that we are not alone. I invite you now to join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation as you picture yourself in this space. As we strive to be compassionate, non-judgmental citizens of the world, we must begin with ourselves. So I invite you to breathe gently and recite inwardly the following traditional Buddhist phrases directed toward your own well-being. We must begin with ourselves because without loving ourselves, it is difficult to love others. So I invite you now to say quietly to yourself, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be at ease and happy. And then, when we've cared for ourselves, we direct our intentions outward. After focusing on ourselves for a few minutes, Choose a benefactor, someone in your life who has loved and truly cared for you, and picture that person and carefully recite these same phrases. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be well in body and in mind. May you be at ease and happy. Repeat this as often as necessary. Let us covenant together this morning to show love and compassion to ourselves and to everyone we encounter. And to this, let us say together, amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots wholly close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
I am a bird, unnoticed but free, that soars in the sky in radiant glee. I watch from above, watch the people go by. I try not to care, I try not to cry. I try to ignore the things that they say, the things that they think as they go on their way. The less things I notice, the less I will hear. The less pain I will suffer, the less I will care. I'm deaf to the insults, I'm deaf to the jokes. I won't even hear the hurtful remarks. I watch from above and I see it again. I see that people are happiest when they stop judging each other and look deep inside to see the real person that is way out of sight, who hid behind layers of bulletproof glass to keep himself safe, to heal from the pain, to wait for the person who will finally care enough to notice the real me that's inside, who won't judge by my looks, who won't judge by my acts, who will know me as me, not as somebody else. As each person stops judging, the world slowly heals. Instead of the gloom, it suddenly beams. There are smiles on faces passing me by. Their thoughts are like halos with no judgment in sight. If people stopped judging each other each day, the world would become a happier place. These last 18 months or so of doing services on Zoom have given me a new appreciation for the people that we see on television every day. It's really a whole new skill set. So we're all becoming little TV stars and producers. So once in a while, we will have our glitches. Back in the 1980s, I worked in a group home for developmentally disabled people in Syracuse. As disabled adults, these group home residents all qualified for food stamps. So what the home would do is they would combine everyone's food stamps, and when the staff went to the supermarket to buy groceries for the house, we would use these food stamps. This was before SNAP or EBT cards, when food stamps were still those little booklets of coupons that looked like money. Remember those? And unlike the SNAP EBT cards of today, where the user can fairly discreetly just swipe the card once, people spending those coupons back then were far more conspicuous. After the cashier had rung up your groceries, the food stamp user had to page through the coupon book looking for the right denominations. If memory serves me right, the cashiers were not supposed to give actual money in change, or not any more than they absolutely had to. So you had to get the denominations right, and it took a little bit of time of searching through that book. Since I was new and young, it was often my job to do the grocery shopping. And since I was shopping for 11 or 12 people, I'd usually have 2 great big shopping carts full of food, and sometimes as much as $1,000 in food stamps burning a hole in my pocket. So as a healthy, able-bodied 20-something male, I can tell you that I would get a lot of looks of disapproval from cashiers and fellow customers when I wheeled 2 great big shopping carts full of meat and eggs and cheese and other grocery items up to the checkout line, and then whipped out book after book after book of food stamps to pay this huge bill. I wish I could afford to stock up like that, a middle-aged woman in line behind me said one day, but stupid me. I'm one of those fools who has a job, so I have to watch my spending. Another day, an elderly man confronted me, and he used his finger like this. "You should be ashamed of yourself, young man," he said, "living off the taxpayers like that. Why, you need to do what the rest of us do. You need to get out there and get yourself a job. Why, you look perfectly healthy to me." My favorite one, however, was the woman who actually began picking through the groceries that I had put on the belt. The cashier was still ringing me up that day, but I had already begun thumbing through the coupon books to be ready when the grand total was announced. One of the things I had on the belt was 3 or 4 packages of cookies. And this woman said, "If I were living off the taxpayers, I would buy flour and sugar, and I would bake my own cookies if I wanted them. This would be a lot cheaper," she said. Next, she actually picked up a large roast that I was buying. "I wish I could afford to eat like this," she said. "If I were you, I wouldn't be buying expensive cuts of meat. I'd be eating pasta every night." Finally, she had done this enough that the cashier spoke up and said politely, "Ma'am, if you would just let me finish with him, I will be with you shortly." She replied, "And then I get to pay twice." She said this really sarcastically, once for my own groceries and once for his. So by the day that this happened, I had been through this sort of thing with strangers enough times that I had stopped explaining to them what I was really doing. The first few times it happened, I patiently explained about the group home, and I explained that the groceries were not in fact for me. I explained that I did in fact have a job, and that what I was engaged in at this very moment was my job, shopping for disabled wards of the state. And that I did in fact, in my own personal life, purchase all of my own groceries with my own earned money, just as they did. But interestingly enough, I had noticed that this explanation rarely softened these people's attitudes, and it rarely did anything to quell their ire. They seemed to disapprove just as much, even after they understood what was going on. I had also developed a tougher skin at that point, and I decided that I didn't owe such people an explanation. So on the day that this woman started picking through the items, I simply didn't react and I didn't say anything. It was a little hard. When everything was finally bagged up and I had spent several minutes counting out hundreds of dollars worth of food stamps in the right denominations, the cashier said to me, "I am very sorry that you were subjected to that." The offending woman heard this and she said, "Well, since I'm the one paying for those groceries, it's too bad if he doesn't like it." At that point, yes, I had to bite my tongue. I was tempted to say something, but I resisted the urge. As I said already, one of the things that I had noticed after a few years of those scenes was that even after I explained, it didn't seem to matter to anyone. It seemed that there are many people out there who fundamentally resent the idea of anyone, even the disabled, receiving assistance from the taxpayers. Their judgments had been made. The story that they had told themselves about me was already written in their minds, and their feelings about me were set. So, a little context. Keep in mind that this was in the mid-1980s, just a few years after Ronald Reagan had sold the public on the idea of the so-called welfare queen. Remember that myth? A mythical situation that he claimed was very common. As he said of the welfare queen at the time, and I took this quote from a speech that he gave when he was running for office, "She has 80 names, 30 addresses, 12 social security cards, and is collecting veterans benefits on 4 non-existing deceased husbands. And she's collecting social security on her cards. She's got Medicaid, she's getting food stamps, and she's collecting welfare under each of her names. Her tax-free cash income alone is over $150,000 a year." Remember her? So, to be a little bit fair to my critics, I believe that it's quite possible that when they saw a healthy 23-year-old pay for 2 entire shopping bags full of food, shopping carts, that is, full of food, with 10 or 12 books of food stamps, they legitimately believed that they were witnessing an example of the sort of rampant fraud that their president had assured them had reached epidemic proportions. Whatever the case, they had made their judgments, and these judgments had confirmed for them their worst fears about the world they lived in. That it was full of lazy, dishonest scoundrels who made their living by scamming the very few decent, hardworking people who were actually left. And while it's true, few people actually spoke their judgments aloud when I did these shopping trips. I felt judgments intuitively every single time I dropped $500 of food stamps in one transaction. And not just from the customers, but from the cashiers too. Everyone, it seemed, made a judgment and created a story about me and about what I was doing. And each person who made these judgments then accepted what they thought they were seeing as the absolute and total truth about me. And while I must say, the few people who acted on their judgments should have held their tongues, I can't completely fault them for making judgments in the first place. It is, after all, human nature to judge. To be human and have a mind is to judge. We are all making judgments and creating storylines all the time. And while it's true, I doubt that anyone gathered here among us this morning would ever behave in the way that those people in the supermarket treated me. It's equally true that we all make judgments and we all create stories about the people around us. Everyone from strangers to our most intimate family members. Now, the judgments are not always harsh and negative, but they are nearly always made from a place of superiority and privilege, even when we truly believe that our motivations are purely compassionate and noble. Friends will often ask me, "What's the sermon about this week?" So when a friend asked me this week and I told him about the topic, he chuckled. "You're a UU, for God's sake," he said. "You're preaching to the choir on this one. I doubt any of your members need a sermon about not judging people who use food stamps." And while I think that he is largely correct about the fact that few, if any of us in this First Universalist community would make the sort of harsh and negative judgments that I was subjected to at the Valley Plaza P&C in 1985, I don't believe that any of us are free of judgments or free of self-serving stories about the other. In preparing for this sermon, I read a quote from Michael J. Fox on the topic of judging others. He said that he had a cousin who was honest enough to admit that she enjoyed judging other people because it boosted her self-esteem and it made her feel better about herself. What a gift she offers all of us with that candidness. Few, if any, among us could say with complete honesty that we are free of these motivations. I know that I can't say it. And quite often, this is true even when the judgments that we make are benevolent and the stories we tell ourselves about what we are seeing are compassionate. Last winter, I was in the checkout line at Wegmans. In front of me was a woman about my age, and then ahead of her was a young couple with a full hand basket. We were in the 15 items or less line. As I am naturally nosy, I must admit, and I had nothing to do but wait, I watched the food that the young people were putting onto the conveyor belt. What they were buying were not choices that I would make. 3 frozen pizzas, 4 frozen entrees, and a whole cooked rotisserie chicken. My judgments kicked in immediately. Not very healthy, was my first thought. They should really learn to cook. It would be cheaper and healthier. I could tell that the woman who was between the couple and I was also watching them. And like me, I'm pretty sure she was making her own judgments as she stood there waiting to pay for her Greek yogurt and organic blueberries. When the young couple went to pay, the female member of the couple pulled out a SNAP card. The Greek yogurt woman was watching too. And although she didn't say anything, I felt her energy shift. And I saw what I judged to be, anyway, a disapproving look cross her face. Well, being a good, informed, compassionate UU liberal, I immediately felt disapproval of the Greek yogurt woman and an overwhelming sense of understanding and compassion for the couple with the SNAP card. How dare this middle-class Greek yogurt eater judge this obviously impoverished couple? They probably live in a hotel room, or maybe even in a vehicle or an RV, and they have nothing but a microwave to use for cooking. That is no doubt why they are buying frozen dinners. Maybe they have disabilities that aren't obvious to us. Maybe they are veterans with PTSD. Perhaps they are on parole and struggling to find work. Or maybe they're in recovery and trying to rebuild their lives. In any case, it's 2021, for God's sake. Doesn't this Greek yogurt woman understand that poor people often buy these foods because they lack cooking facilities? Doesn't she understand that minimum wage jobs aren't enough to pay rent on an apartment? Doesn't she realize that what she is seeing is desperation and not the laziness she assumes it to be? Hasn't she ever watched Bill Moyers? Good for me, right? Unlike my neighbor with the Greek yogurt, I get it. I am woke. She no doubt drives a Lexus SUV, and she's going to go home to her house in Pittsford, where she will put the Greek yogurt and the organic blueberries in her enormous stainless steel refrigerator and then pour herself a glass of Cabernet before she complains to her husband about the lazy welfare bums she just saw buying frozen pizza with a SNAP card. I, on the other hand, am socially aware, and I understand that this poor couple will likely be taking an RTS bus back to Motel 6, where they will eat their rotisserie chicken and try to enjoy a few minutes respite from worrying about how to pay for next night's lodging. What a good person I am. So kind, so compassionate, and so socially aware. If only the Greek yogurt woman could see things like I do. What a wonderful world it would be. So, obviously, I made lots of judgments and created fairly detailed stories about both the young couple and the Greek yogurt woman. And while my judgments about the Greek yogurt woman were harsh, and the ones I made about the young couple were benevolent, they both had one very important thing in common. Like Michael J. Fox's cousin, all of the judgments I made and both of the stories that I created boosted my self-esteem and made me feel better about myself. In the case of the Greek yogurt woman, it's easy to see what the problem was. I assumed a morally superior role with her. I was kind and she was mean. I was accepting and she was judgmental. I was generous and she was stingy. I understood how the world really worked and she didn't. And then look at the story that I created for her. A wealthy, suburban, conservative Lexus driver, someone who had it easy and took pleasure in looking down on others. I just saw her in a checkout line. For all I know, she is actually a widowed waitress who lives with her daughter and only recently began eating Greek yogurt and organic blueberries after a health scare. Now, with the couple in the snap card, it's a little more complicated. On the surface, oh yes, I was benevolent and compassionate, a woke mensch who understood intimately and appreciated deeply the many difficulties and struggles of the working poor. What's wrong with that? Isn't that, after all, who we all strive to be? But is that the complete truth? Or is that the story I decided to tell myself about who I was and what my motivations were? Well, if I'm going to be completely honest, there is more to it. And it isn't all quite as noble as that. Yes, I will admit, I am a compassionate person. And yes, I do genuinely feel for anyone who is struggling. However, also, like the other 7.6 billion human beings on Earth, I will admit, I am insecure. At times I am troubled, and I am always aware of my own vulnerability. So it was not only my judgments about the Greek yogurt woman that made me feel better about myself and made me feel superior to others. The story that I told myself about the young couple's precarious hand-to-mouth struggle made me feel fortunate and blessed, and yes, in my heart of hearts, a bit smug, because mixed in with all of that compassion and kindness was a moral certitude that I had made better choices, that I had probably worked harder, sacrificed more, and because of that, and most importantly, because of that, I was inoculated against a similar fate. That couldn't happen to me. There is also something voyeuristic about the whole experience. The young couple in front of me in line were not there to serve any purpose for me at all, and certainly not there to feed my psyche or get involved with my emotions. They were just living their life, and they were doing an errand for themselves. What I saw, or thought I saw, and what I judged and created about them was completely and utterly and totally about me. I was, in a sense, using them to make me feel intrigued and fortunate and superior from the story that I created about them. It was my own private poverty porn. For anyone who has not heard of poverty porn, let me briefly explain what it is. Poverty porn includes books, movies, and TV shows which exploit the condition of poor people by objectifying their struggles for the sake of entertaining a privileged audience. The movies Nomadland and Hillbilly Elegy are two excellent recent examples of this genre, which is growing in popularity. We are both entertained and inspired by the struggles of the poor. And we also experience a huge sense of gratitude that we are not struggling that way. And at the same time, I believe that these stories do reinforce in us, even the best of us, a certain certitude that perhaps We made better choices. Now, I do understand that not all of us are affluent in this congregation. There are members of our congregation who struggle financially. But this phenomenon is not limited to poverty alone. There are all kinds of voyeuristic books and shows and movies that feed the same need. An example, the television show Intervention allows those of us who are not drug addicted to experience the same sort of benevolent yet superior feelings toward those who do struggle with this. Stories about those with mental illness can serve this self-gratifying purpose for those of us who don't share this struggle. Stories about divorce can make the happily married feel blessed. And stories about illness can prop up the psyches of the healthy. We all of us, make judgments and create stories about those around us, which serve the purpose of comforting our psyches and propping up our own egos and enhancing our self-esteem. Okay, so what is the harm? What harm is it doing? Why does it matter if, in the privacy of my own mind, I make judgments and create narratives that make me feel better? Who am I hurting? I am probably not acting on these judgments and stories like the customers at the Valley Plaza PNC did. Well, I have come to see that while it's true, I rarely, if ever, behave in that way. My judgments do nonetheless impact how I feel about and behave toward other people. Whenever I am judging, whenever I am creating a story, I am holding myself apart. I am sitting in privilege. I am selling others short. I am not fully engaged in the struggle. I am carving out a safe haven for myself in which I am superior and safe. And I am missing out on the richness of encountering the people around me with a truly open-minded heart, fully available to receive whatever it is they have to offer. Think about how often people have surprised you when you were able to let go of the judgments you had made about them and the stories that you had told yourself about them. Never, ever underestimate the power that these thoughts have over how you perceive the world, how you encounter others, and how happy you may or may not be. When we are judging, we are not experiencing. We are thinking, not living. We are substituting our limited concoctions for limitless possibility. Think about it. Do you really want to limit your life experience to just your own interpretation of reality? I know that I do not want to. What I don't think most of us realize until we think about it is the extent to which we do just that every time we make a judgment. Becoming aware of our judgments is crucial to living more openly and more fully. Now, we will never ever stop making judgments, but if we learn to observe and notice them, we will lessen dramatically the power that they have to keep us separate from the world around us and from the people who share the journey with us. I am working on making judgments. I have not stopped making judgments, but I am, I will say, doing a bit better when it comes to noticing them. I do still need to work on my voyeuristic tendency, however, to observe strangers in public. A few months ago, I was at the dollar store getting some gift bags for my students. There were two women waiting in line for me who obviously knew each other. One woman had several items of snack food and soda in her cart, while the other one piously held 3 cans of tuna and a can of soup in her hand. The woman with the tuna was being fairly obvious in looking through the snack items that the other woman was buying. And finally, the woman with the snack food said, "Are you planning to pay for all this?" "What do you mean?" the woman with the tuna asked. "I see you looking through my cart," the first woman said, "and I know what you're thinking. I suggest you mind your own SNAP card." At that, the woman with the tuna laughed. "You are right at that," she said. "We'd all be better off minding our own business." And then the two of them began chatting about a mutual friend. I think the woman with the snack food gave some pretty good advice. May we all covenant together to be mindful of our judgments and to mind our own SNAP cards. Our final hymn is number 121, "We'll Build a Land." We invite you to remain muted and sing out joyfully from home, again creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves.
We'll
As we extinguish our chalice flame this morning, let us read together the words printed in your order of service and on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Though we cannot be seated next to one another, we are still connected in this community. As we come to the time to close our service, I want to invite you all into an embodied practice of holding hands from a distance at the end of our service. If you're joining us by video, please change your view to gallery view rather than speaker view, and then reach your hands out to the edge of the screen. For people here by phone, place your hand over your heart and bring to mind someone from this congregation that you dearly love. There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in the world not to find the right balance every day. There is too much pain in this world not to heal every day. Each and every one of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence. Every day, every single day. And let the people of the church say together, amen. As we come to the time to close our service, I invite you to follow this benediction with the words, may I always be filled with loving kindness. Please join us now in typing these words into the chat together.
Francis Poulenc wrote some of the most beautiful sacred music that we know. I think he wrote this piece for a movie in the 1950s.